hapon.
Hi!
Ay, mga tumi sa Garden of the Gods.
Yes.
So, kamirang tulo. We have our car. We have our food. Pero, gamay na ang tubig.
Magkwas tag water.
So,
7-Eleven.
tag water. So, ang pagatan na. Narang. Ito mo pagatan na ako. Wala nga naman akong battery. Oo. Oh, binagpot kayo. Hala, kalapot. Siyempre, kung anong lubat man eh. Habis na.
As we travel today, we need your guidance and protection in viewing our lives, but without you.
Anda, battery ito. Cafe restrooms, okay. Sa mig-ihianan. Naalagi sila ikuan, sakay-sakay. Unsa man na? Move you do? Resume. Ako mga kauban ng taga Maryland, taga Virginia, char. Diri naman din sila. Mga American.
Bisaya.
Oh, Bisaya, American. Mix. Taga diri na. The view.
Gray Rock, Southgate Rock. Rock is a formation called the Kissing Caverns. The scientists tell us that about 150 million years ago, this whole area was under a shallow inland sea. These rocks were flat on the sea floor. Millions of years of tectonic shifting, volcanic eruptions, all sorts of movement created the Rocky Mountains. So when those came up through the earth, brought these rocks standing straight up the way they are now. They actually go thousands of feet below the surface. So beyond Garden of God, we have Pikes Peak, 14,115 feet tall, and we call our 14,000 tall peaks 14ers. We have 56 14ers in the state of Colorado. That's more than anywhere else. So if you travel west in a couple of hours, you'll see the rest of them, or if you drive up Pikes Peak, you'll see all of them. Pikes Peak is also called America's Mountain because in 1893, a teacher by the name of Catherine Lee Bates took a mule to the top, and she was so inspired by the view, she wrote the poem America the Beautiful.
Cool.
Then put to a gospel song. The indigenous people of this area were the Mountain Ute, and they actually believed they were created on that mountain. Now, they called that mountain Taba, which means sun. It's the first of the Rocky Mountains to receive the sun in the morning when it rises. And they called themselves the Tabawache, meaning people of Sun Mountain. So they would camp up in the mountain during the summers. During winters, they come down to this area and set up camp. Now, they had their enemies, and they were typically a Mormon country. They wrapped off Cheyenne. However, this was considered a secret and sacred and peaceful area. So here they can meet in peace and trade commodities. The Mountain Ute women are known for their beautiful white buckskins, and then trade lodgepole pines for peace and like that. So we will head on in to the garden. I do have a mic, so you guys should be able to hear me back. Got extra time. Look at the beauty, right? vegetation in the park. Pinyon pine, juniper, gamble oak, got choke cherry, bluish grayish vegetation to the right is sage, and the native people would dry that and burn it for ceremonial purposes. The spiky plant on either side of the road is a yucca, and they would use the roots for soap and shampoo, and the top portion can be sharp enough to penetrate leather, so they'd use that for sewing. Got a mule deer hanging out here. He's been there for a few hours.
Where?
Cloud cover.
Black backlight ito.
Lighter in color, and that is actually called the Leaping Maiden. You might be able to make her out. She's facing back that direction. You might be able to see her nose, her lips, her chin. She's wearing a papoose on her back, and she's called Leaping because when it rains, the water pulls behind her head and comes out her eye. On the right, this formation right here is called the Big Footstep. Yeah, it's like a footprint. There's going to be a formation that stands out all by itself over here called the Scotsman. He's facing back that direction. He's tam o' shanter on his head. front of Pikes Peak. It's got a straight vertical line up the front of it. That is called the Manitou Incline. It's named after the town that is at the base of the mountain called Manitou Springs. The Manitou Incline was a pulley train back in the 1890s. It would go up backwards and come down forward. Then turned into a tourist attraction, and in the 1980s it fell into disrepair, so they removed the rails, they took the ties, and made steps. There are 2,744 steps, rises 2,000 feet in 1 mile. People come from all over to climb to the top of that. It's not easy. Takes the average fit person between an hour and a half to 3 hours. If any of you are familiar with a speed skater, he won a lot of gold medals in the Olympics a number of years ago. His name was Apollo. He was here training at the Olympic Training Center, and he made it up there in just under 17 minutes.
Damn.
Does he? Oh, really? When he got started? I didn't know that. Almost. Center at the top of the mountain, so there's a lot of construction, and it's already been pushed back. It was supposed to open in mid-May. Now it's probably the end of June. So there's construction up there, so there's no parking. So that
Right here. Push right there. That's what I was telling you about. Oh, yeah.
Tuberculosis is a bacterial infection that infects the lungs. It's also called consumption because it would consume the lungs. And most people would die from it because there was no cure. It was a highly infectious disease. But dry air is considered very healing. So people would come and stay in sanatoriums here and learn to live with the illness. So now you can go up to the Chamber of Commerce in Manitou, and they'll give you a map and a cup, and you can walk around town and try each spring. anyone is caught climbing higher than 10 feet on those larger formations, there is a $500 fine, and then they have to pay for the fire department to come rescue. And we have the fire trucks in here 2 to 3 times a week. So Pikes Peak is named after a man who never actually climbed it. 1803, after the Louisiana Purchase, President Thomas Jefferson sent out 3 expeditions to explore the West. Lewis and Clark, Red River, and the Pike. The Pike was led by 24-year-old Lieutenant Zebulon Pike. He was sent out here to locate the headwaters of the Arkansas River. He located it in 1806, about 3 hours west of here outside of a town called Leadville. And in the distance he saw that big blue mountain, which at the time was called El Capitan, which means the leader in Spanish, because our earliest explorers were the Spaniards. He set off in the month of November in summer clothing to try and climb Pikes Peak. He only got as far as Mount Rosa, which is a mountain to the south here, looks like a pyramid. He and his men were in waist-deep snow and had not eaten in 2 days. So he turned back to camp and he wrote in his journals, "No one will ever climb the mountain." Obviously, Mount Butte had been up there for thousands of years. 1820, another expedition. Stephen Long and Edwin James made it to the top. And then in 1858, the first female, her name was Julia Holmes. She wore lace-up leather boots and bloomers under her Victorian skirt. She made it to the top. She also went up in the month of August. So there is a 19-mile road up Pikes Peak. It was put in 1915, and then in 1917 they started the first timed automobile race up Pikes Peak, second oldest only to the Indy 500. It is called the Pikes Peak Hill Climb, and it typically takes place the last weekend of June. It starts at the 7-mile mark and goes to the top, so it's a little more than 12.
Human na katulugon ko ba? Stang